Let me ask you something personal. Not the kind of question you casually throw into a conversation or post on social media, but the kind you wrestle with in silence when the lights go out, and it's just you and your thoughts. What do you do when your biggest enemy is your own mind? I'm not talking about dramatic breakdowns or existential crises, although those come too. I'm talking about the quiet battles we fight daily. That rising panic when you're not where you thought you'd be by now. The loop of self-doubt whispering, "Maybe I'm just not enough." The frustration of knowing what you should do, but not finding the strength to do it. No one sees those fights. No one claps when you win them, but they shape you more than anything else. And here's the truth. Most people lose these battles, not because they're weak, but because they never learned how to fight them right. Now imagine this. What if your mind was a fortress, not impenetrable to pain, but resilient in the face of it? Not immune to fear, but anchored in something deeper than fear. That's what the Stoics spent their lives pursuing. Not just peace, but peace under pressure. Not just strength, but strength with wisdom. Stoicism isn't about becoming stone cold or emotionless. It's about learning how to respond when life punches you in the gut. It's about building a mindset so steady, so rooted in clarity, courage, and control, that no matter what chaos surrounds you, you don't crumble. I know that might sound like a distant ideal, but it's not. It's a skill, a practice, a mindset anyone can build. And in this video, we're going to explore exactly how, not with fluff, not with cliches, but with timeless principles forged in the fires of real human struggle. We'll walk through what the Stoics taught, wisdom passed down by emperors, warriors, exiles, and everyday people who faced hardship, not so different from yours and mine. And I'll show you how to apply it to your life right now when you're anxious, tired, or just trying to make it through the day. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll walk away with something real, a blueprint not for avoiding difficulty, but for facing it with eyes open and heart steady. You'll learn how to build your own mental fortress, brick by brick, from the inside out. Let's begin. Turning struggles into strength. Let's be honest. Life doesn't ask for permission to hit you. It doesn't wait for you to be ready, well rested, or emotionally prepared. Sometimes the storm shows up right in the middle of an already difficult season. You lose your job the same week. You get bad news from the doctor. You have to smile through pain because people are depending on you. You wake up in a fog, wondering how you're going to make it through the day again. And in those moments, it's tempting to ask, why me? Why now? Why this? But the Stoics taught something radically different. They didn't promise us a life without hardship. They promised that hardship could become the path, not the obstacle. The Stoic Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And at first, that might feel like a slap in the face. So you're telling me it's my fault I feel this way? No, not at all. What the Stoics meant was this: you don't control the world, but you do control your response to it, and your response is where your power lives. Here's a perspective shift that's changed my life. What if every challenge is actually an invitation? An invitation to practice patience when you're stuck in traffic and your thoughts are spiraling. An invitation to build courage when you're terrified to speak up or take that first step. An invitation to develop resilience when everything you planned is falling apart. Instead of seeing adversity as something to survive, the Stoics invite us to engage with it, to ask, what is this moment here to teach me? How can I grow from this discomfort? What part of myself do I now get to strengthen? Because sometimes the very thing that breaks you is the thing that builds you. But how do we actually live that out? It starts with perception. You get to choose how you frame what's happening. Traffic isn't a waste of time. It's a practice in presence. Criticism isn't rejection. It's a chance to strengthen your clarity and conviction. Failure isn't a verdict. It's feedback. This isn't toxic positivity. It's mental training. It's choosing to hold space for your emotions while still guiding them. The Stoics weren't against feelings. They simply refused to let feelings lead. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who carried the weight of an entire empire, journaled through his own inner chaos. And he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength isn't flashy. It's quiet. It's in how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. It's in how you keep showing up when it would be easier to quit." So here's the question I want to leave you with. What if the challenge you're facing right now isn't here to stop you, but to shape you? What if this isn't the breakdown, it's the beginning of your rebuild? Remember, the obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. Let that sink in before we move on. The wealth that can't be spent. Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable in a world obsessed with more. If everything you owned disappeared tomorrow, what would you still have of value? It's a hard question, especially in a culture where success is often measured in square footage, brand names, and follower counts. But the Stoics, men who walked through power, exile, war, and silence, measured wealth differently. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his most valuable legacy, not his palaces, not his armies, not even his victories, his thoughts, words scribbled to himself in the dead of night, never meant for public eyes, now serve as a compass for millions trying to navigate modern life. Why? Because ideas endure. Here's the truth. Material wealth fades. Mental wealth multiplies. You can lose your job. You can lose your savings. You can lose your comfort zone. But you can't lose the strength of character you've cultivated, or the insights you've forged through pain, or the quiet discipline you've practiced when no one was watching. That's real wealth. The kind that no economy, no recession, no external crisis can touch. We live in a time where consumption is glorified. Scroll more, buy more, want more. But the Stoics flipped that script. They asked, are you filling your mind, or just your closet? Are you building insight, or just collecting things? Seneca said, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more. That is poor. Let that sink in. Think about the people who've shaped your life, not the ones who had the most, but the ones who gave you something lasting, a thought that stayed with you, a perspective that cracked something open inside of you, a sentence that changed how you saw the world. That's the power of cultivated wisdom. That's the legacy of living with depth. And that's what Stoicism encourages. To invest in your mind like it's the most valuable asset you own. Because it is, not just by reading more, but by thinking more clearly, reflecting more honestly, speaking more truthfully, creating more meaningfully. Here's a question worth pausing over. Are you spending your life, or are you building something with it? We get so busy trying to make a living that we forget to make a life, and not just for ourselves, but for the people we'll never meet, who might one day read our words, witness our choices, and follow our example. You don't need to be famous to leave a legacy. You just need to be intentional. So, what kind of wealth are you chasing? Because money has its place, yes. It pays the bills, creates freedom, provides comfort. But if your inner world is bankrupt, no outer success will ever fill that space. And if your inner world is rich, you can be at peace even with very little. In the end, the most valuable thing you'll ever create is who you become. That's the wealth that can't be stolen. That's the inheritance no market crash can erase. So choose to think deeper, choose to live wiser, and build something inside that no one can take away, creating your own path. Let me start with a quiet question. Whose path are you walking right now? Yours, or the one the world laid out for you? It's easy to lose yourself in a world full of noise. Everyone seems to have an opinion about what your life should look like. They tell you what success is, what happiness should feel like, and how far behind you are if you haven't reached certain milestones by a certain age. But here's the thing the Stoics knew, and most of us forget. You can't live someone else's life and expect to find your own peace. Self-awareness is where your true journey begins, not in achieving more, not in impressing anyone, but in asking yourself, honestly, what do I value? What actually matters to me beyond approval, status, or tradition? And this isn't always a comfortable process. Sometimes it means admitting that you've spent years chasing something that was never really yours. A degree, a job title, a relationship that looked good on paper, but felt hollow in your chest. But that discomfort, that's not failure. That's the beginning of awakening. As Epictetus said, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Now, here's the hard part. Knowing isn't enough. You have to act. At some point, you have to choose the road that scares you a little, the one with fewer footsteps, less applause, and more resistance. It takes courage to live aligned with your values when the world pressures you to conform. It takes backbone to say no to what's expected, so you can say yes to what's real. And yes, you'll be misunderstood. You'll be questioned. You may even feel alone for a while. But here's what the Stoics remind us. It's better to walk the lonely road of authenticity than the crowded path of approval, because only one of those leads to inner freedom. And once you've stepped onto that path, your path, it doesn't end there. You have to keep learning, keep adjusting, keep listening. Life isn't a straight line. It shifts. Your purpose will evolve. What filled you at the 20th of May not satisfy your soul at 35. That's not weakness, that's growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can show me I am mistaken, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth," which never harmed anyone. Humility, openness, adaptability. These aren't signs of instability, they're signs of strength. A strong life isn't built on rigidity. It's built on resilient alignment, knowing your center, and adjusting your course when necessary. But here's what might surprise you. Your path is not just about you. Stoicism teaches that personal virtue is always connected to the greater good. You don't just walk your path to find yourself. You walk it to serve others with more wisdom, more empathy, and more clarity. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. When you make brave choices, you become a quiet inspiration to someone else who's struggling to find their own way. The Stoics didn't pursue virtue for vanity. They did it because a better self builds a better world. So let me ask you one more time, with softness, not judgment. Are you walking your path or following someone else's map? You don't have to have it all figured out, But you do have to listen to that quiet voice inside, the one that keeps tugging at you when everything else goes still. That's the voice you follow. That's the path you create. And when you do, you don't just live, you lead, facing change without losing yourself. There's a moment we all come to quiet, often unwelcome, when something in our lives shifts. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's subtle, like a restlessness you can't quite name. Other times, it's loud, a breakup, a layoff, a diagnosis, a goodbye you didn't expect. And when that moment comes, we feel disoriented. We reach for what's familiar, but it's already slipping through our fingers. So the question becomes, what do you hold on to when everything else is changing? The Stoics had a radical answer. You don't hold on to the world. You hold on to yourself, because change is not the enemy. Resistance to change is. Epictetus taught a core idea called the dichotomy of control. It's simple, but powerful. There are things you can control and things you cannot. You can't control the economy. You can't control other people's choices. You can't control the past, but you can control how you respond. You can control your character, your perspective, your next step, and in that space between what happens and how you respond lies your freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rocky headland against which the waves constantly break, and still it stands firm." He didn't say avoid the waves. He said face them grounded, calm, steady. That image has carried me through more than one personal storm. I remember when everything I thought was secure unraveled. Plans fell apart. People walked away, and I felt like I was losing the ground beneath me. But I wasn't. I was losing my illusions. And underneath those illusions was something unshakable. Here's what I've learned, and what the Stoics teach. Change is not here to destroy you. It's here to refine you. Every transition, every loss, every season of uncertainty is a chance to sharpen who you are. It forces you to ask, what do I really value? What can I live without? What still anchors me when everything else moves? And that's the beauty of Stoicism. It doesn't promise comfort. It promises clarity. It teaches you to stop chasing stability out there and start building it in here, inside your own mind, inside your own soul. So how do we actually live this? Start with presence. Change often makes us run into the future, into our fears. But presence grounds you in the now. Then, practice reflection. Ask yourself daily, am I resisting what life is asking of me? Am I clinging to the past out of fear or out of love? Can I meet this moment with openness instead of control? And finally, recommit to your values. Because even as everything around you shifts, who you are doesn't have to. You can stay rooted in wisdom. You can stay aligned with courage. You can walk through change, not untouched, but undeterred. So if you're in the middle of something uncertain right now, if you feel like life is moving too fast and you're losing your grip, remember this. You were not built to stay the same. You were built to evolve, and not everything falling apart is a crisis. Sometimes it's the clearing, the space where something truer can finally take root. Let the waves come. You are the rock, building a vision that outlasts the noise. Not just this year, but across the arc of time 10, 20, 30 years from now. Most people are so busy reacting. They never pause to aim. They move fast, but without direction. They hustle hard, but don't know why they're running. And, eventually, they burn out, not from effort, but from emptiness. That's why the Stoics weren't just focused on daily habits. They were obsessed with vision, not vague ambition, but a deep-rooted clarity about what kind of life is worth living. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." It sounds simple, but it requires something we rarely give ourselves: stillness. Because clarity doesn't come in chaos. It comes when we turn inward and ask, what kind of person do I want to become? What do I want to stand for when no one's watching? What would a meaningful life feel like? Not just look like. That's the beginning of vision, not chasing what the world celebrates, but defining what you value deeply, quietly, and truly. Once you have that clarity, the next step is harder, living in alignment with it, because life will test your vision. You'll be tempted to compromise for comfort, to detour for approval, to abandon your long-term growth for short-term gratification. But the Stoic path calls you back, not with shame, but with strength. It reminds you that each day is a brick. Every choice you make is shaping the structure of your future. Will that structure hold in a storm? Will it reflect your truth or just your fear of missing out? And let's be honest, vision isn't a one-time epiphany. It's a living, breathing thing. It evolves as you grow. It expands as you gain wisdom. It demands reflection, revision, and recommitment. Seneca once said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable," meaning even the best opportunities are meaningless if they pull you away from where your soul longs to go. So take time regularly to sit with yourself, to check your course, to ask if your schedule reflects your soul, because life isn't just about motion, it's about meaning, and meaning requires vision. Here's a practice that's helped me. Every month, I ask myself, is how I'm living today moving me toward the life I want to look back on? Am I doing something just because I can or because it truly matters? What would my future self thank me for? These aren't easy questions, but they cut through the noise. They pull you out of reaction mode and into intentionality. So if you're feeling lost, overwhelmed, or directionless right now, that doesn't mean you're failing. It just means it's time to reconnect, not with what's urgent, but with what's eternal, because one day, all the temporary wins will fade. The numbers, the attention, the applause. What will last is the kind of person you became along the way. Build a vision that honors that. Let it be resilient, flexible, and rooted in virtue, because when the storms come, and they will, it's your vision that will hold you steady, turning adversity into advantage. Let me ask you something you may not have been asked in a while. What if the hardest thing you're facing right now is actually the very thing that could set you free? It sounds strange, even a little cruel, but think about it. That disappointment you can't shake, that loss you didn't see coming, that delay that makes you question everything. What if it's not here to destroy you, but to develop you? The Stoics believed that adversity is the training ground of the soul. They didn't see struggle as a punishment. They saw it as a curriculum tailored, purposeful, even sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, the obstacle isn't blocking your path. It is the path, and every hardship, every setback, rejection, or frustration is an opportunity Not always to win, but always to grow. So the next time you're in the thick of it, angry, heartbroken, disappointed, ask yourself gently, what is this moment inviting me to practice? Is it patience, humility, resilience, compassion? What can I learn here that ease and comfort would never have taught me, because adversity doesn't just expose your character, it builds it. Like a muscle that only grows through resistance, like a sword that's only sharpened through fire. This isn't a romanticized version of pain. This is about reclaiming your agency inside of it. I'll be honest, there have been seasons in my life where I begged for relief, where I felt buried under stress, uncertainty, and silence. But in hindsight, those were the seasons that shaped me the most. Not because they were easy, but because they demanded I dig deeper, to find calm when chaos knocked, to choose grace when anger made more sense, to stay true when everything around me screamed, give up. That's the Stoic mindset. Not passive suffering, but active transformation. You don't wait for the storm to pass. You learn how to stand inside it with your head high and your heart steady. And here's the deeper truth. Your pain is never just for you. Someone, somewhere, will need the lessons you're learning right now. They'll need your story. They'll need your strength. They'll need to know it's possible to go through something hard and come out more whole, not less. So when you find yourself thinking, why me? Maybe ask instead, who could this help someday? Not to minimize your struggle, but to expand its meaning. The Stoics didn't avoid adversity. They used it. They asked, over and over again, what virtue is being refined here? How can I respond in a way that honors who I want to become? Can I stay calm, not because life is easy, but because I'm grounded? That's what being a true Stoic looks like. Not emotionless, but emotionally disciplined. Not unshakable because nothing hurts, but because you've built something inside that suffering can't shake. So, whatever you're walking through today, whatever pain or pressure or uncertainty you're carrying, let it mold you, let it reveal you, and let it lift someone else someday. Because adversity doesn't have to be your enemy. It can become your edge, leading with character, not control. Let me ask you something different today. When you picture a true leader, who comes to mind? Is it someone powerful, loud, followed by thousands, or is it someone quiet, grounded? Someone whose actions speak louder than their titles ever could. In a world obsessed with influence, Stoicism offers us a different kind of leadership. A leadership that doesn't begin with others. It begins within. The Stoics taught that before you can lead others, you must govern yourself. And that's much harder than it sounds. Anyone can bark orders. Anyone can wear a suit and delegate tasks. But it takes real strength to master your emotions before they master you. Stay calm when others panic. Make decisions not for popularity, but for principle. Epictetus said, no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom, in this sense, isn't about having power over others. It's about having authority over your own mind, your impulses, your ego, your desires. That's where real leadership is born. I once worked under someone who barely spoke, but every time they entered the room, people sat up straighter, not out of fear, but out of respect. Why? Because their presence was rooted in consistency. They didn't speak to impress, but to uplift. They didn't micromanage, they modeled. They didn't claim credit, they shared it. That's Stoic leadership, integrity over image. And it's rare. Stoic leaders aren't perfect. But they're humble. They seek feedback, not flattery. They admit when they're wrong. They listen more than they speak, because they understand leadership is service, not status. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote daily reminders to himself, not about conquest, but about character. He knew the more power you have, the more responsibility you carry to use it wisely. And you don't need a title to lead like that. You just need a mirror and the courage to lead yourself first. So what does that look like in everyday life? It means saying no to shortcuts that betray your values, holding space for others' opinions even when you disagree, owning your mistakes instead of blaming the system, asking, in every decision, does this serve only me or something greater than me? Because leadership isn't a spotlight, it's a shadow. It follows you everywhere, even when no one's looking. And here's something that gets missed in modern leadership culture. Adaptability is not weakness, it's wisdom. Stoic leaders adjust not because they lack conviction, but because they value truth over ego. They remain firm in principle, but flexible in method. They grow, they evolve, they learn, not just from books, but from people, from hardship, from honest feedback. Because the moment a leader stops learning is the moment they stop leading. So if you've ever felt too quiet, too unsure, too different to lead, remember this: you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't need a podium to make an impact. You just need to start with yourself, to live your values out loud, to stay steady when others sway, to lead, not for praise, but for purpose. And in doing so, you become something the world is starving for, a leader who leads by example, not with control but with character, a life built from the inside out. So here we are, at the end of this journey together, or maybe at the beginning of yours. We've walked through storms and silence. We've looked at pain not as punishment, but as practice. We've talked about patience, purpose, presence, and the kind of power that doesn't come from the outside, but from within. And if there's one thread that runs through it all, it's this: you don't have to escape your life. You just have to learn how to stand inside it differently. The Stoics didn't give us a checklist. They gave us a compass, a way to move through chaos with clarity, a way to carry ourselves when the world forgets what matters, a way to lead, love, and live not for applause, but for alignment. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you were always meant to be. Quietly powerful, fiercely honest, deeply present. And maybe right now, you don't feel strong. Maybe you're tired, behind, confused. That's okay. The Stoic life doesn't begin when things are perfect. It begins when you pause, when you choose to respond instead of react, when you whisper to yourself in the dark, there's still a way forward. And I'm going to walk it, one choice at a time, one breath at a time, one step rooted in virtue at a time. So as you move back into your day, into your world, take this with you. You are not your fear. You are not your failure. You are not your past. You are the space between stimulus and response. You are the builder of your own inner citadel. You are the leader of your one precious life. And it doesn't matter where you've been. What matters is what you choose now. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If this spoke to something deep inside you, don't let it stay here. Reflect, revisit, rebuild. Because this kind of life, the Stoic life, isn't about theory. It's about practice, daily, quietly, faithfully. So let's keep walking. You, me, all of us trying, failing, growing, Not to be perfect, but to be present, to be real, to be free. Stay steady, stay grounded, and remember, you are stronger than you think, and more whole than you've ever been told.